My man, Ryan Harris, welcome back to the Gridiron and Growth Show. This is your co-host, Benny Fowler, and your other co-host, Ryan Harris. We are here to talk about Championship Sunday, being former players and now fans of the game. I mean, we saw some incredible football on Sunday. We saw some incredible coaching. We saw some incredible leadership. We saw some incredible performances. And I don't know, where do we want to start? Do we want to start with just the first game in terms of Kansas City and Baltimore? I would love to hear your thoughts, not only from a football player perspective, but then also a leadership perspective with what you saw from John Harbaugh, what you saw from Kansas City, what you saw from Lamar Jackson, what you saw from Patrick Mahomes, the players, the moments. Share it with me, my friend.
Well, first thing I think about, we saw an incredible amount of stupidity, too, by head coaches. And let's be clear, head coaches say the worst things about players. So I have absolutely no problem saying Dan Campbell was less than intelligent when going for it with a 14-point lead in the second half on 4th and 2. You gave the game back to the 49ers. I get it. It could have made a catch. Doesn't matter. And this whole idea of, oh, we're always aggressive. You made a mistake. The way you do things doesn't mean that it's okay to make a mistake. Dan Campbell cost the Lions the game.
Yeah.
Your lack of control cost you the game. And people have to see that coaches aren't ready for the moment many times. And that was one of them. The players for the Lions played an incredible game. Jared Goff was fantastic on the road. Rarely have you seen him play that well, and he was robbed by his coach. What do you think what's the first thought that comes to mind for you at this AFC Championship weekend?
When I think about the championship weekend, the first thing that always goes back, I don't really miss football a lot during the season. The only time I really miss it is, weekends like this where it's like, oh no, all the marbles are on the line to go to the Super Bowl. And I only played one championship Sunday, one for one on that championship Sunday, but I'll never forget the pressure in that moment on that Sunday is totally different than the Super Bowl. I actually think there's more pressure on championship Sunday than it is on Super Bowl Sunday. I think to play in that game, to win in that game. And I'll never forget, our first championship Sunday, when we went to Super Bowl 50, Peyton ran for a first down in the first quarter.
Ran for it.
This last year,
said all we needed to know about how important it was.
Exactly. And that's that type of moment. When I look at Championship Sunday from the Lions' perspective, I do agree with you in terms of Dan Campbell. Like, you play smart football. This is not the regular season. And this isn't the game against the Cowboys where you're trying to do things and you keep reporting eligible. And then, everybody wants to blame the refs for this and that, but you had the opportunity to kick the field goal and go into overtime. I think when you have an opportunity like that to kick a field goal and go up 17, you do that. If we reverse back to when Joe Burrow beat Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City 2 years ago to go to his first Super Bowl, the Kansas City Chiefs had the same opportunity, and Cincinnati stopped them on 4th down, and Cincinnati ends up coming back and winning that game because they should have just took the field goal and took the points. So I think things like that, I know Detroit was in their first, Dan Campbell's never coached in a high intensity game like that, but the details matter. And you saw Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers go back to the details. And that's because they've been in those situations where they've lost games like that.
Yes.
So Dan Campbell did, there's a lot of stupidity there, but there is no substitute for experience. So if I had to steel man the argument, hey, you've been rocking like this all week or all year. So, I mean, I didn't expect anything less.
Yeah, but I want to click on that though, because you've been playing like that all year, and Dan Campbell came out and said, hey, we've been aggressive all year. That's who we are. That's not an excuse for making mistakes. Like you can be an empathetic leader, you can be a player's coach, you can be a sales rep. Like, the way you do things is not an excuse to fail. That's the only thing that, it's crazy to me. You could never go to a coach, and if we made a mistake and coach is like, Ryan, why'd you miss that block? Oh, coach, when I go, I go. So, man, I took an outside zone step. He left like that. This is how I play all year. Like, it doesn't, you would never survive a meeting like that in the NFL, but a coach can say it? What the hell? But I want to go back, man. Let's talk about this. Let's bring the listeners in, bro, because you said something so true. That championship weekend is a ton of pressure and it's a different game, right? And I tell people, every playoff level you go through, it becomes physically harder in addition to mentally harder, right? Like I think about the hits in those games. But walk through for our listeners. Take us up, okay? Because everybody, all you listeners, here's a key. When you play the Patriots, you're getting a call at between 3 and 4 in the morning, or a fire alarm between 3 and 4 in the morning. We got that for the second time that year because we played the Patriots twice. So after the Inverness 5 a.m. wake up that we all got and we all stayed in bed for because we knew what it was, what did the championship Sunday day look like for you, Benny Fowler, the day of the AFC Championship game versus the Patriots and Tom Brady?
You know what? I didn't really think much of the AFC Championship game. I knew there was a ton of pressure, but me as like a second year player, this is my second year in the league, and we've been the number one seed my first 2 years. So I knew it was pressure to get to the Super Bowl. I didn't know the type of pressure until I really arrived to the arena, though. I wasn't nervous the week of. We had beat the Patriots with Brock as a quarterback during the year in the snow game, and we're getting ready to play at Mile High at home and it's 60 degrees. I'm like, man, this is perfect weather. As a receiver, I'm good. I have a I have a slant perfectly designed for me in the red zone. That's all I was actually thinking about. That I have a play actually designed for me
What was the
where,
play call? What was the play call?
well, I was playing the F position, but slant is like my favorite route to run. So they put it in like, hey, if we're going to be running, if we're going to be in the red zone, Benny, like we have a play for you because I'm gonna kill anybody on a slant, man to man, doesn't matter. And you know how the Patriots are. The Patriots are gonna play man to man. They're gonna put their best, couple corners on Emmanuel and Demarius, and I run the slant. So I was just super happy that I had a play actually designed for me in the AFC Championship game. But then when I saw the pressure of like how everybody was acting, closer to game time, that's when I was like, oh, like this is totally different than what I thought. And then when I saw Peyton run for the first down, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely different than what I thought. And then the intensity, the amount of talking that goes on in the
Ooh,
AFC Championship is
what?
totally on a championship Sunday. There's a lot of respect for players between players during the season. Hey man, I want you to stay healthy. Hey, this and that. But the amount of talking and the way people hit each other on Championship Sunday is like, oh no, my family's right behind me, and I can't let you touch them at all. And that's what we saw this past Sunday. I mean, please share with me in terms of how you saw Championship Sunday when we played, and then what you saw this past weekend.
I was fit to be tied, man, because I knew going against the Patriots. I mean, and I really mean it. And I'm glad you mentioned, Benny, the words that are said on those championship weekends. I mean, hey, I don't want my kids to hear that mic'd up because I'll tell you something. I had one I knew. And again, I love I loved playing against Bill Belichick teams. And one thing that Bill Belichick did ever since I played against him, even with the Broncos, my first stint, after the first game, the refs would come to me before the game and they'd say, "Hey, Ryan, Bill says you need to move up on the line." And so, this would go on. This is 6, 7 times. This is like the 8th time now, So I knew that was coming. And I knew that I was facing Dante Hightower. And I swear to God, I'm right here on this podcast. I'm telling you, when we see each other in person, it is either going to be the biggest hug of mutual respect and love, or we are fighting in that moment. And I'm ready either way. But on that day, I was going to end his playoff dream. So I knew that I was going to get Bill Belichick talking in my ear through a referee, and I knew that I was going to have a day against Dante Hightower, and he was going to suffer. And sure enough, Benny, we got to the stadium. I get out there, we're in pregame warmups. The ref comes up. He's like, "Hey, ref." He goes, "Hey, Ryan, hey, 68, Bill." I said, "I don't give a what Bill says. He says it every game. Don't let him make you a fool." And the ref just looked at me like, "Holy, like what?" That was not the response. And I
Yeah,
screamed, and I looked over to Bill. So I'm like, "Bill, that's the mood I was in, bro.
yeah,
Get out of
exactly.
here."
Yeah.
And then Dante Hightower, man, the first dude, I'm telling you, if you watch this film from the All 22, you are going to see a war between me and Dante Hightower. I hit him so hard, so often that Bill Belichick changed the rules after that season where you couldn't spear people because I speared Dante Hightower at least 7 times in that game. And I hit him so hard one time that, we had so for those listening, we had a 19, right? We had a 19 play, which is like a run to the left with the tight end on the front side. And Benny, I had the front side end to the Sam with the tight end, right? And the end was wide. And so this is right after I nailed Dante Hightower. So I take my step, the end goes outside. I'm coming up for the Sam who's looking at me, wham, ear holes. I mean, I got depleted by Dante Hightower. Somehow he was a middle linebacker on that play. Now, we gained a bunch of yards, but I knew in that moment it was over. Because I said, if I have him that pissed off, if I've kicked his ass that much, this is a great game. I've already won. And sure enough, we did. I mean, I said things to that man. I hope he's forgiven me, but I meant it at the time,
Yep,
and that's
Matthew Slater said the same thing. Matthew Slater said the same thing to me. I went to Chicago after free agency in Denver, and then I signed with the Patriots because I got cut from Chicago, and I signed with the Patriots. And I actually went up to Matthew Slater, and I was like, "Man, it's been a pleasure. It was a pleasure to play against you in the AFC Championship." But I apologize because the things that I was saying to him on special teams, because he's going to the Hall of Fame. It's for special teams, but
mhm.
the amount of that I said and the type of things that I said, number one, my mom would be super disappointed in me.
They would not
My
recognize us as
my
their
future
children, would they?
kids, my future kids, the people who employ me now would be like, "Oh my God, you talk like that?" Because I'll never forget. Matthew Slater even said to us on the field, I think it's me and Kayvon Webster. Oh, Cody Latter is me and Cody Latimer. He said, "Why are you talking like that?" I said, "What do you mean? Why the am I talking like that? Why are you not talking like that?" But hey, that's what it means to like want to play in the Super Bowl. And you obviously know DeMarcus Ware and Peyton talking about it before the game of the importance of this. And you only have so many opportunities. So I want to shift back to Baltimore versus Kansas City.
Well,
And I want to
it's a perfect transition. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to know your thoughts around that game. I have thoughts around Big Red, I have thoughts around John Harbaugh and then Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, but I'd love to hear your thoughts just overall on that game.
Well, let's continue that thread of the trash talk right into that Ravens Chiefs game.
Yes.
Travis Kelsey on the first play of the game hit Kyle Hamilton and was you and I can read lips. He said what we would have said in that moment at that same mindset.
Yep.
And that was fun to see. And right then I'm like, the Chiefs, no. And everybody's making, oh, Patrick Mahomes kicked the kickers stuff. Heck yeah. Get out of my area. This is my field. This is where you're gonna play us today, but this is our field. So it started right away with the Chiefs. And then what in the absolute world were the Ravens doing taking the football after winning the toss? You lost the game there. You gave no chance to your team to recover from the greatest quarterback to ever play the game in Patrick Mahomes. And then you go 3 and out? Woo! And then what you also saw was the difference between a championship team led by a champion and a team that was waiting to be that team. Zay Flowers fumbling in the end zone after getting a penalty. I mean, these are things that don't happen on championship level teams. And to be clear, in that game, Travis Kelsey got a personal foul drawn against him with Van Noy, and he made that situation happen. He pushed the guy, they pushed him right in front of the ref, they got the flag. Like, you cannot be so emotional that you lose focus. And the Ravens were so emotional, they lost focus. And the Chiefs don't play around in January. Hello, that's clear. And so that's what I see when I saw that game. I saw a championship team that had the mindset, willingness, and physicality to dictate their will, and it happened from the beginning of the game. What did you see in that Kansas City Ravens game?
Something that always sticks with me, and my brother's a assistant coach at Western Michigan. My brother always says when the emotion of the game dies down, then you have to play. When the emotion of the football game dies down, now it's just football. And Roquan Smith, what he said throughout the week. Oh, he's an elite quarterback. We're an elite defense, and that's what we're going to do. The antics before the game. No, things like that. When the emotion of that dies down and those first couple hits die down, now who's the better football team and better football players. But the emotion, they were still playing off of a lot of emotion. The Ravens were, and Kansas City was just playing football. Andy Reid's first 15 plays of the game, masterful. Puts all the different personnels out there: 11 personnel, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, 22 personnel, and drives right down the field. And to me, that comes down to preparation. And I think Kansas City is the most prepared team in January. Patriots, everybody talks about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, and that dynamic duo was the most prepared every time you played. They're just going to be the most prepared team because it's still football. It's not going to be who's the most talented, which Patrick Mahomes is the most talented. Lamar Jackson is just as talented, but Patrick Mahomes, coach, was more prepared. Todd Monken, I think the offensive coordinator from Baltimore, you weren't prepared. You didn't watch any film because you're trying to beat Patrick Mahomes at being Patrick Mahomes. How about you just use Lamar Jackson's legs? Who cares? I don't care if you ran for 300 yards and you passed for 0 yards. If you won, you would have won. But you got in the way and you ran the ball 6 times. The running backs touched the ball 6 times. Come on. That's honestly
Unacceptable.
ridiculous. And I think from a leadership standpoint in business, entrepreneurship, in sports, if you're not prepared, you can't win.
And the thing for me, when people say, "Hey, coach has got to prepare," what does that mean? I know from playing with Andy Reid. Andy Reid doesn't put a playbook together for a game. He doesn't put a game plan together. He puts plays that he knows players love in the game plan. So I would sit there when I was playing for the Chiefs, and Andy Reid would say, "Look at this play." And O line, yeah. Running backs, yeah. It's not. That's the preparation. Not just what the plays are. What are the plays that get my players excited? No one does that better than Andy Reid. The difference between Andy Reid and every other offense is he picks the plays that gets his players excited and they execute because they're prepared for it. And in terms of Todd Monken not running the ball more than 10 times, the Chiefs beat you out of your game plan. What does anybody think about when they think about the Ravens? Defense and running the ball. And you didn't run the ball? You let the emotion of the game dictate what was going to happen. It was just an awful experience. Again, an example of when coaches aren't ready for the moment. Todd Monken was not ready to coordinate an offense in the AFC Championship game. And you and I know too, and people aren't going to talk about this. And I think Mark Andrews, possibly a Hall of Famer, great player. And if you're bringing a player in who hasn't been around for 3 months, that's going to change the offense. And I think it did. I think with Mark Andrews in, Monken was more willing to throw the ball versus run it. And you can't live there in a playoff game, especially in an AFC Championship game.
He would have been special situations only, and that's it.
Yes.
I'd love to just put you in Baltimore's locker room before the game. Put you in Baltimore's locker room before the game, you being yourself, somebody who's already won before. What would you have told Lamar / the offense the night before?
Not even the night before. In the game, I would have grabbed Todd Monken and told him to run the ball.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I had those conversations with Gary Kubiak. There were times that San Diego game that we've talked about. I walked up to it. We're running the ball. I think we had 4 turnovers or something throwing the ball. I said, we are mashing them up front. Pull your head out and let us run the ball. We ran for over 200 yards. That's what I'm thinking about. Because to me, I never want to bother guys in the locker room. I think our Super Bowl 50 team, you would tell, we had a lot of things. A lot of guys needed different things before games. I'm not getting in there. And once we're on the field, this is our office. And I'm not going to let a coach us out of the game. And so that's where, to me, there was a lack of leadership from the players in the Ravens that allowed the offensive performance to be the way it was. You do not let yourself go through 3 drives and have 5 run plays in the playoffs. That your lineman leader cannot let that happen. Your quarterback cannot let that happen. Your receiver can't let that happen, right? Because as a receiver, if we're throwing all the time, they're getting better and better at recognizing your routes and what you want to do.
100%. No, you got so many combinations.
So this is anybody on offense walking up, and I don't care if you got to grab the phone. Hey, pick up the phone and call Todd Monken up in the booth, or if he's on the field, run the ball, or we're fighting after this game. We are fighting after this game in the locker room. And that didn't happen, clearly.
And shifting it over into the corporate world, for people who are in the corporate space where the stakes aren't as high in terms of pressure and amount of eyeballs on you, tough conversations or knowing what's made your business great having those conversations. And who's going to be the one to make sure we hold each other accountable? Who's going to be the one to say it to the leader? Sometimes it's hard to say it to the CEO. Sometimes it's hard to say it to the head coach, but somebody has to do it or we're going to lose. And we don't want to lose because when we lose, we don't make money. And when we don't make money, we lose jobs. And somebody that I don't know who it's going to be, but people on the Baltimore Ravens that started that game on Sunday will not be employed next year. They will not be employed. There will be some people who will not play ever again because of what was shown on tape. And Todd Monken, you're now on notice.
Hey, to be true, John Harbaugh might be on notice too, right? I mean, how many times are you going to have the same story? How is he different? How are the Ravens different than the Cowboys? And you said one word that I think is huge, especially taken to the corporate world, because that's we had one word the year we won Super Bowl 50 in the back of our room, and it was accountability. Right? Remember that big banner we had? And what I tell people when I do speeches, any person in the organization can be accountable. And for the exact reason you're talking about, Benny, somebody's going to not be employed next year. And what they're going to think is, I should have told coach to do this. I should have spoken up. And it's not worth it. Your shyness, being an introvert, being unsure, it's not worth being an accountability check, even if it's against the leader. You have that right as a member of the team to hold others accountable. And whether you're in corporate space or on the field, if you do not hold people accountable, you personally will pay a price. Someone personally will pay a price for the lack of accountability between the players and coaches of Baltimore. Not worth it. And whatever you're doing in your job, it's not worth it if you have a big project of a big client and there's an accountability issue that can be fixed. And by the way, you build trust when you fix those accountability issues, right? Hey, that was my fault, guys. Hey, I got it next time. Now you trust me, right? Now you trust me because I'm accountable. You have to hold others on your team accountable, and it does not matter your position in the organization.
I want to shift to Kansas City, though. I want to shift to Kansas City and just the preparation that they had, the leadership they had, the poise that they had. I think Kansas City showed an incredible amount of poise, really from a couple positions. Obviously, Andy Reid, super poised throughout the entire game, from the game plan to navigating the tough situations to the way they even ran the ball. Those first two in their 4-minute offense, 2-minute offense, they ran the ball, got the look they wanted on 3rd and 9, and then they call a concept that you can't beat. Oh, you guys are going to double here? Well, we're just going to throw it over the top. And then you think about Patrick Mahomes' poise, not turning the ball over, the way he made plays within the pocket. I think just incredible leadership all around. And the way that transfers over into the real world is that when there are stressful moments, high stress moments, coming back to your preparation and are you poised? You can be poised and you can be poised in tough environments and in tough situations if you are prepared. And preparation comes from practice. And I think you and I and Julius talked about knowledge, skill, and discipline. Kansas City does that better than anybody. They're the most knowledgeable team. You know from playing with Andy Reid, they practice more than anybody. They get a certain amount of reps every single practice, and then they're the most disciplined team. I don't know, maybe they had 2 really bad holding penalties. I don't think they had a lot of penalties though. They didn't have any personal fouls, and they made the plays when it mattered.
And poise is more than standing still. I think oftentimes people think poise, they think it's somebody standing. Poise is your belief and willingness,
Mhm.
right? Like from the first snap, Kansas City was willing to win the game no matter what it took. And Baltimore wanted it to go a certain way. You could tell that in the way they were playing, and that's the preparation piece. In practice, did you prepare your players for change? Did you prepare your players to be flexible? I mean, Benny, how many times would we walk into the locker room at halftime and Gary Kubiak's going, "Hey, they're playing man. Great, we're gonna throw up our man beaters. Then we're not gonna go to different something that we're gonna attack what they're doing. And guess what? Be ready." And I don't even play receiver. I remember him saying this: "Be ready to go back if they want to switch it up." I mean, like, what did you prepare your team for if you're the Ravens, a team who specifically the week before had a miraculous second half performance, completely missing this time. But what people miss about Patrick Mahomes is he is the fastest processing quarterback we've ever seen. 2 weeks ago, he switched the ball to his left hand to throw the ball beyond the line of scrimmage to save from an intentional grounding. He makes a perfect pass to Marquez Valdez-Scantling against the Ravens against zero pressure, and Valdez-Scantling catches it. He moves with his feet. He can run the football too. He did a pump fake twice beyond the line of scrimmage, but he knew he was beyond the line of scrimmage. We haven't seen a quarterback with this much processing power. Patrick Mahomes processes things so fast that NVIDIA is jealous. Intel is jealous of his processing power. It's unbelievable how he operates within the milliseconds of the game.
Yep, and he's gonna have to continue to do this, but, over the long period of time, but he's still I've seen people talk about it now. Yeah, I mean, he's the best quarterback that I've seen, and he doesn't have to win 7 Super Bowls for me to say that. That to me, that Tom Brady wanted to play 25 years, he got 7 Super Bowls. Who knows how long Andy Reid will coach because a lot of that will factor in, but in terms of the quarterback position, it's not even close. Like, I mean, 6 AFC championships, won 4 of them, and to do it as a top 10 pick, though. So he's doing it as advertised. He's not some underdog player that is overachieving. Like, I mean, he came in with high expectations because they traded up to get him at 10, and he's surpassed everything. And I mean, it's crazy. I've never seen it.
Well, and let's remind people he wasn't the first quarterback taken, right? I mean, how about
Who
for all
was
of
that
us who
year? Oh,
feel
who was that? Was
I
it?
exactly, exactly. Who was, right? You know what I mean? I don't know, don't care. Because
Yep.
there's one quarterback in that draft that's going to affect every draft since it. But seriously, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like all of us have been disappointed in whether it was our selection or what we were picked for or what it, but that's being picked in the top 10 and not being the first quarterback. That was a lie
Yeah.
against Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
He was the guy. He should have been the number one pick overall, right? I mean, all of these things. So I just love reminding people too, like you said, he's not an underdog and he had to deal with difficulty. People doubted Patrick Mahomes. Even Lamar Jackson, people asked him to play receiver at the combine,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Like,
insane.
do not
People like
think
that should be
like
fired.
that. Oh, absolutely. And don't think for a minute you're the only one that doesn't get what they want the way they want it. And believe that your success can happen regardless of that. And that's what you learn in Patrick Mahomes. But you know something more that I don't know here, and I want to get this for myself and our listeners. I'll tell you something. You know what it's like in that moment of a zero blitz, and you've got a great quarterback. What's different from a great quarterback in that situation versus a good quarterback? Everything from ball placement to the call. Like, what's different when you have a great quarterback in those situations where you got to hit on a versus a blitz zero in a pass?
Yeah, on a gotta have it situation, what I think about from a great quarterback, and I played with Peyton, Eli, Drew Brees, 1 week with Tom Brady in blitz zero situations in a gotta have it situation. Number one, they notice it. They can see it. Hey, blitz zero's coming. They also let the people around them know that, hey, blitz zero is coming. So not they understand it, and then they communicate it out to everybody. Peyton was the best at double point, single point, double point over here, single point. He would let you know who's hot. What we did really well with Peyton and what made him great is that he Peyton knew he couldn't make the type of throw that Mahomes just made. We would run a tunnel screen, then take it 80 yards. Oh, here we go. We're running blitz zero. They're going to blitz the house, have the 2 receivers block out, have the lineman come out, block. Demarius takes it. So just incredible things like that. I think what makes quarterbacks great in those situations, though, is the communication. Their knowledge, taking their knowledge and spreading it out to everyone so everybody's on the same page to make the play happen.
And I can hear Peyton saying zero. I can hear him say we had code words too, and what it does is it puts everybody in that track of thinking, right? And people can do that at the company you work at. Hey, I know this client. This sounds tough. They're going to ask for this, but if we see this, here's our plan, right? Like communicating. I think that's great. You brought that up.
Back to the 49ers and Lions game. I honestly, when I was watching the first half of the game, I had booked flights to Vegas because my mom is a huge Lions fan. I'm sorry, mom, that the Lions lost because I was going to take her to the Super Bowl because they haven't been since I've been alive or since she's been alive. So I was going to take her to Vegas. I booked them at the end of the first half, and I canceled them at the beginning of the fourth quarter because the Lions could not weather the storm and the 49ers were able to weather the storm. Tell me what you thought about Kyle Shanahan weathering the storm, especially with that offense. You know that offense, it's hard to come back because they run the ball first. It's hard to come back, especially when you're down double digits. Tell me what you thought about them.
I believe everyone's overlooking the biggest thing I think everyone's overlooking in the San Francisco game is Kyle Shanahan running the football in the second half. This was a major departure from what he had done. And I think about the run late, I think it was in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter. McCaffrey to the left, down the left-hand side, right? Started, he got contact at 4 yards, spun, corkscrewed, it's a 7-yard gain. Like, that was not a play that Kyle Shanahan called in the past. Clearly, Debo Samuel wasn't 100%. Hats off to him for playing. But the ability to even down, stick with what makes you great as an offense. We're going to run the ball, George Kittle, run the ball, Ayuk, run the ball. I mean, that's how they did it. And conversely, for the Lions, everybody was thinking the wrong thing. And what I mean by that is they clearly had multiple moments, individual players and coaches, where they thought they were going to lose. You can't ever think like that. Peyton taught me that when we were in the end zone in Kansas City, down 14 points. Hey, we're doing this. I'm like, he thinks we're going to win this game. I better believe it too. But the minute you start saying, "Oh no," like there's an opening for a comeback. Now you're looking at things that don't matter. It doesn't matter what the 49ers. If you're the Lions, it didn't matter what the 49ers did. It is irrelevant to your success, but they made it relevant and they lost. And again, Dan Campbell cost them with very, very low intelligence coaching decisions, emotional coaching decisions that cost his team a right to fight for a championship. Brutal.
Belief. You touched on the belief. You touched on it with Peyton just now in terms of the Kansas City game. You touched on belief in San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan believing his play calls. Please talk about Brock Purdy and the way he believed in the man. I'd better not hear any Brock Purdy slander.
I forget who he threw it to. I want to say it was Ayuk, but he scrambled to the left. He literally ducked under somebody trying to bring him down, and he stood back up and he ran. I think one of the defenders for the Lions almost had him in a sack. I mean, he was like knees bent, almost on the ground, twists out of it, rolls out, throws the football. Like that split second of, you grown man are not going to put me on the ground. That was something few quarterbacks are going to do in the NFL. Brock Purdy fought for every inch. Brock Purdy ran the football like he could. He took a next step. To me, he took a championship step in his development, right? He went from a guy you can talk about in regular season. Is he the guy that makes the difference? Or maybe he's just a game manager. No, he was the difference in that game against the Detroit Lions. What did you see? What impressed you most, Benny Fowler, Super Bowl champion, about Brock Purdy?
I think his poise. I think he was very poised for somebody who's never. I mean, he got hurt super early in the game last year, NFC Championship game, but his poise and then the confidence in which he delivered throws and big time plays and some of the scrambling ability, adapting. Okay, no one's open, no one's open, no one's open, going through his reads and then scrabbling for the first down. And then I noticed after he kept making big plays, he wasn't celebrating. He did not celebrate until they took that final knee, which means, in the Kobe terms, job's not finished. Job's not finished. And man, Brock Purdy, I mean, when the way I kind of compare it to life or see it in terms of life is that Brock Purdy showed what it takes to prepare and execute, prepare and execute, and play the next play, living within the moment, winning the day, win the week, win the week, win the month, win the month, win the year. Brock Purdy was just winning the play, win the play, win the quarter, win the play, win the quarter. And fourth quarter comes around, and he probably didn't even know what the score was. He just knew they were winning. He just knew they were winning. And that's the way he was lost in the moment. You could tell.
In the best way, lost in the moment, right? Like so present, like there's nothing outside of this moment. Yeah.
I was going to say, shout out to my dad. I wrote this down. My dad would always say teacup. I don't know if you've ever heard the saying teacup, but thinking correctly under pressure. And that's what Brock Purdy did. Teacup. My dad would always tell us, my brother and I, that growing up. Teacup. When we get to high pressure situations, and obviously we're playing little league, but thinking correctly under pressure will win you games.
Here's another here's another thing about Brock Purdy people forget. He was literally the last pick in the draft. They call him Mr. Insignificant.
Yeah.
That's what that draft pick means. And we talked about Patrick Mahomes not being the first quarterback taken. How about every quarterback being taken before Brock Purdy? Right? Like,
Right.
do you listening have the belief and willingness to work when no one else believes in you and literally call you insignificant? Like, think about the work that Brock Purdy did. That might have been the last time in his life that that he will be insignificant,
Yeah.
and only
Forever.
because other people said it, right?
Yep.
And what does he do? He puts on his jersey, he takes notes, he goes to work, he improves, and now he's playing for a Super Bowl. Be Brock Purdy in your life. What would Brock Purdy do with disappointment? Get to work, right? I mean, this is Mr. Insignificant being one of the most significant players in the NFL again this year. Don't
Yeah.
lose that either.
And as we wrap it up, I'd love for you to give your synopsis, but as we wrap up Championship Sunday, from my perspective, what it comes down to from a leadership perspective is, are you prepared as a leader? And is your team prepared? Do you have emotional control?
Mhm.
Do you have the emotional intelligence? Can you have tough conversations in real time to be successful? And can you execute? That's what
Mhm.
Championship Sunday, what we just watched, came down to those elements. And that's what makes people a champion.
And for me, it's when you look at championship weekend, my first thing is, did you plan to be there? Right? I mean, there are a lot of teams who did very, very well in the regular season and clearly did not plan to be in the championship game. So, in your life, whatever that AFC championship weekend is, whatever that NFC champion, whatever that weekend is, whatever that event is, did you plan to be there? Did you plan to be at the awards show for being the best company? Did you plan to be one of the best companies for employees? Like, what was your timeline? Because you saw two teams that really didn't plan for what it was going to take to win on championship weekend. And whether you like football, don't like football, that is something we all are going to experience. A place and time where we say we want to be there, but to use Julius Thomas's, where's your work? Is your work meeting those aspirations? And when those moments come, you do not have to be perfect to be successful. You have to be willing. You have to be willing to overcome the lies you're telling yourself. You have to be willing to overcome the lies that other people are telling you about what's going to happen. You have to be willing to overcome a score that may not be in your favor. And the teams that did that were successful. And and you can be successful when you understand what it's going to take and you plan for it. But Benny, we can't end without the predictions. So Super Bowl 50 champion Benny Fowler, what is your Super Bowl champion prediction for the end of the 2023-24 season?
I don't know what the score will be, but I'm going with Kansas City. I mean, 2 weeks for Big Red to prepare. I would go with that. I think San Francisco has some holes in their defense that can be exploited by Big Red. I think Steve Spagnuolo has been the coach of the year in terms of the coordinator of the year. I mean, the defense that Kansas City's playing right now is incredible. But I'm going to go with the better quarterback and the more prepared team that I think will be there. So I'm going with Kansas City. How about you?
For me, this Super Bowl is all Kansas City. Stop playing with this man, Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't care what superstars in attendance. He doesn't care who drops the football. He doesn't care what the score is. He's coming to beat you. He's not thinking about you. And guess what? Neither is Big Red, as you call him, Andy Reid, as they call Big Red. And more than anything, and you know that what happened with our Super Bowl 50 season, we had coaches that had experience and knew how long the 2 weeks was before the Super Bowl. I'll never forget, first thing we got back after winning the AFC Championship, Gary Kubiak's like, guys, I'm giving you 3 days off. And I'm like, what? He's like, I'm giving you 3 days off. You handle the tickets, you handle your family, and when you come back, I need you for 12 days. Andy Reid and his coaching staff has that knowledge of this week. They know what has to happen in practice. I talked to them before. I talked to one of the coaches I know there before their first Super Bowl victory, and I said, hey, whatever you do, make sure to practice red zone twice, especially when you're down on the site, because that's where this game's going to be won. And sure enough, they did that. And after they won, the coach texted me, said, hey, We ran red zone twice, like you said. Must be why the reason why we won, right? But they know what to do. They know what the practice schedule, travel schedule is going to look like. So I got the Chiefs winning this one. And it's a shame because the 49ers have played a great season, but Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback, which means he'll have the best coaches, which means they are going to win the Super Bowl again.
This has been another episode of Gridiron and Growth, recap of Championship Sunday and Super Bowl predictions with my friend Ryan Harris, and I am Benny Fowler. Thank you for listening.